Hello.
Hi, it's Barbara.
Sorry about the link there.
I'm gonna try and add our PQ equity background.
I like your current background.
Thank you. I do too. It's that is not it.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, Shadi.
Hello.
So I'm going to make you all co-hosts. You don't need to worry about that, but that's just going to let me essentially make it so that your faces are on the screen instead of participants. So nothing you need to do in the Zoom, but I'm going to make you co-hosts. So
Kevin, can we stop the recording and start it when the meeting's actually starting? Also, Dave sent you an announcement, Kevin.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, David.
Hey, David.
Hello there.
So we have 52 participants now. Want to give it another minute or two, Nancy?
Yeah, maybe.
Nobody from my office joined, even though I told them to.
Maybe just another minute. And Kevin or Jada, will you guys just kind of watch over the attendees and mute them if they aren't keeping track of?
Yep, definitely.
What are you looking for?
Okay, Kevin, it's 4:35. I think we should start.
Yeah, let's get going. I'll keep admitting folks as they join. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is the ASHRAE January monthly meeting. First orders of business, pretty minimal. Just want to remind everyone that ASHRAE student scholarships are due at the end of the month, January 31st. We'll be giving out. So if you could all just make sure to mute yourselves as you join, that would be great. So yeah, we'll be giving out up to 4 $1,500 scholarships. Been some emails sent out about that. If you have any questions, feel free to get in contact with anyone on the board and can give me some more information. The application is quick and simple, and applicants do not need to be members of an ASHRAE student chapter. So with that order of business out of the way, have a great meeting set up and ready to go for today. As I mentioned, if everyone could just make sure they're on mute to start the meeting during the panel discussion, that would be great. Later on in the meeting, we'll divide into breakout rooms and we'll have some general conversation. So keep your microphone handy and nearby for that. Before this first portion, please just make sure you're muted. So we have a great panel today. Our moderator is going to be Nancy Cohout. Nancy's a principal and mechanical discipline leader at Smith Group. She chairs the Women in ASHRAE subcommittee in the Illinois ASHRAE chapter. She has over 20 years of experience as a design engineer in Chicago. As a manager, Nancy's a fierce advocate for diversity and inclusion and envisions a future where engineers fully reflect the diversity in our society. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nancy.
Wow, that was a nice introduction, Kevin. Thank you. I'm really excited about our discussion and conversation today. And first off, I just want to thank these panelists because I've asked them to share their experience in the engineering field, and that requires a certain amount of vulnerability. But in my experience, that helps build empathy and compassion and help people to kind of put themselves in somebody else's shoes. So that's one of the goals that we have for today, is to kind of help people see things from a different perspective. And that contributes to us just building a more inclusive engineering society. But second of all, we had a meeting last October. It was called Millennials Managing Boomers. And after that meeting, there was a lot of discussion, and it was really interesting. And we started to realize that, people have had experiences they wanted to share. And so we wanted to provide a forum so that we could have those very real conversations. And then today, the second half of today will be not only for us to maybe share our own experiences a little bit in our small group breakout rooms, but also to set some specific goals for ourselves in our space, in our career, and how we can help have a more diverse ASHRAE, a more diverse workplace, a more diverse engineering field. So I'm gonna have each panelist introduce themselves. I'll start with Yvette.
Hi everyone, I'm Yvette. I am originally from Dallas and I studied at WashU where I got my BS in mechanical engineering. I have been at ESD my entire career thus far for the past 3.5 years as an automation engineer. I've also had a role as a commissioning coordinator previously. Other than that, I am super excited to be here. I am co-chair of the YA ASHRAE committee. I'm also chair of the board for our women's resource group at ESD called Network Empowering Women. And other than that, I'm super involved with nonprofit organizations here in Chicago, one called Midtown Educational Foundation and another called America Need To.
Okay, and then we'll go to Barb. Oh, you're muted, Barb.
but I sounded so good. I'm Barbara Hickey. I'm the Director of Operations and Construction at Willis Tower. And I began my career as an operating engineer in Local 399 and worked my way up to be a chief engineer, achieving my bachelor's degree in communications, but then moving forward into a master's at IIT and kind of working on parallel tracks between academics and my love for our operations and engineering departments. And so I just started here at the tower 6 months ago. And prior to that, I had been building new construction, working alongside our design teams and then our operations teams. So I'm just excited to be a part of this conversation and welcome this opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. We're excited to have you. Juan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Juan. I was born in Mexico, and I'm the oldest of a family of 6. Came to the United States when I was 13 and lived here ever since. I came here and graduated grammar school, then went to high school and college, and then the university. I worked in many different fields, from construction to a restaurant. I was even a baker once. And then I got a job in retail and became a manager. And I have worked with many different personalities. And I'm here to tell my story. I have been here with Smith Group for 8 months after my graduation, and happy to be here. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you, Juan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Shadi.
Hi, I'm Shadi Sharafat. I was born and raised in Iran. I was fortunate enough to go to engineering schools in Iran, Australia, and the US, and work in all 3 countries. My career started in Australia as a design engineer and continued in the US as commissioning. And right now I'm leading the DLR Group's commissioning team from Chicago. I'm very excited to be part of this panel. Thanks for running this conversation.
We're so excited to have you, Shadi. Thank you so much for being here. I know you were one of the people that was part of the conversation after that October meeting. So we're really glad to have you. And one thing I wanted to note is we do have a running chat, and this is not set up as a webinar, so you can share in the chat. And we want everyone to feel comfortable to share in the chat. Everybody has different ways they feel comfortable sharing their experiences. So if that's the chat for you, please, by all means, jump in and share anything that you have to say or want to share regarding diversity in engineering during this conversation. So now that everybody's introduced themselves, I'm gonna kind of ask the panelists some questions to lead the conversation. The plan is that we'll do that. That'll be about like a half an hour or so. And then we're gonna divide into breakout rooms, and we're gonna have specific goals for those. And then we'll meet back up. So now you have an outline of the day. So I have, in the beginning, I have some questions that I want each panelist to respond to, and then I have some unique questions for each panelist. So let's start with Yvette, and I'm gonna ask all the panelists to answer the same question. The first one is, Yvette, what do you think the drivers for the lack of diversity in our field?
Yeah, good. That's definitely a good question. I've done a lot of research, honestly, in terms of like D&I, and when I say D&I, I mean diversity, equity, inclusion, barriers within the engineering industry / the construction industry. Some of the barriers I'd say are just like lack of support for underrepresented groups, and that could be in form of like employee resource groups or just form of like peer-to-peer mentorships, mentorships and sponsorships from people. And when I say sponsorship, I mean like so you have your mentorships of, you know, like someone above you who has like previous experience, but then the sponsorship would be that same person is advocating for you behind closed doors, and saying like, this person, I like truly believe we can put in these like accelerated positions with more responsibility. So I think that's like especially lacking for like women and other underrepresented groups, still to this day. What I guess there's got to be like more resources put in place for addressing like diversity recruitment, retaining of diverse employees, and then again that like diverse employee like leadership pipeline. I don't think that those are like goals that a lot of companies are setting forth for themselves, and they need to set forth like metrics and the resources and the energy and time to really accelerate in all those goals. So that's like my perspective, at least.
Great, thanks, Yvette. Barb, do you have any thoughts on what the drivers are for lack of diversity?
Yeah, I think it's a lot, like Yvette said, I think it has a lot to do with pipeline. When I joined the field and came in pre-qualified, just organically, having done work at my high school summer job, and I had the opportunity to join the union, it was a big shock. And there just wasn't the conversations with young women or young girls around the opportunities that were available to them, and that their capabilities, that they can do it too. So I think really just starting those conversations early, and the more women and people of color and diversity that we see and we can demonstrate to the future generations, I think the better. I really think when you can see yourself in someone else is a very strong message.
Thanks, Barb. Juan, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, because just kind of going on what Barb said, I think that it perhaps starts from early in life. It is beneficial to let students know high school, if necessary, how rewarding it can be to be someone if we put yourself through the whole ordeal of an education. Yes, it is difficult, and yes, but once we go through it, the reward is bigger. I mean, and also let them know that as immigrants, the reason we were brought to this country is to become the upgrade that for whatever reason their parents were not able to be. That the opportunity that are here for whoever decides to achieve, and it is okay to fail and keep going, but it's not okay to never try it at all. So that's what I think that can be done early in life. I believe so.
Thanks, Juan. I agree. I may or may not have failed a thing or two along the way. Shadi, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I think one reason can be not enough information on the advantages of diversity. We all talk about how diversity is good, but do we really explain to everybody why diversity is good? And I think one reason for lack of representation is lack of inclusion. So if we want to have other ethnic groups and like gender identities as part of us, we need to make sure that we include them in our activities. And what are the activities that like engineering offices plan that is interesting to these different minorities or different diverse groups of people? If we all know they're useful, it's useful and it's advantageous to have them, are we considering the events, the environment? Is it all welcoming to groups like that? I remember my first mentor once mentioned when he started mentoring me that the other girls that I have mentored, they all left the engineering field to management. I hope you don't. So these are the people who are already studied engineering and entered the field, but are the workplaces inclusive enough to these people that are already in the workforce? How are we include them in the conversations, even during the lunch breaks for happy hours and all that? What are the activities that make us include everybody? And how do we see language as a barrier? How patient we are, and how much do we know about our biases about people whose English is not their first language? I think these are all interesting, important topics that are rarely discussed.
Thanks, Sadi. One of the things that I'm going to give credit to Jada, who works with me, a revelation that I recently had and did with my group at Smith Group was just really focusing on how to pronounce everybody's name. And it was shocking how many people, you know, were just accepting that people all said their name wrong. And so I encourage everyone to make sure you take the time to say somebody's name right. Let's see, our next question is, what are some positive experiences that you've had in your career regarding feeling included or advocated for as a diverse engineer? Yvette.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I guess I forgot to mention some of my identities. I am a first generation Mexican American. I'm also a first generation college graduate. I come from a low income family background. Obviously, I'm a female Latina of color, and I identify as queer. So, you know, all of these identities and the intersectionality of them, intersectionality being like, you know, the intertwining of all these various identities, you know, it kind of creates some complexities for me when I enter different spaces. And in terms of how Shadi was talking about inclusivity, it definitely makes me feel like the only one in the room sometimes. And that, one, I can't stand up for myself, or there's no one else to stand up for me as well. And I've been in situations where I'm the youngest, the most inexperienced, the only person of color, the only woman in a construction space. And I am undermined, or I am disrespected. And it was really hard for me, especially when I was first starting my career, to try to navigate that. But I will say that the best experiences, or like my most memorable experiences thus far, have been like the advocacy I've received from members of my team. When I first started out, I was one of two women on a team of like 10 or 12 men otherwise, like, and my manager was a white man, but he like pushed me so far out of my comfort zone to make sure that I was like leading projects, putting me in the face of like everybody, to make sure that I was meeting everyone throughout the company and meeting like other like external clients and trades. And that continued when I went into my commissioning role. Again, a white man operations director of my team was the person who like insisted, like, you're going to be the most senior member on this specific project, and I entrust you to train these people and to lead these meetings and to lead these conversations. I have full confidence in you. And, you know, at the time I was like, I'm going to die. Like, this is like just the worst experience I could possibly go through. But yeah, I learned so much, and I really gained confidence from that experience. And I told him, I was like, I felt like I was like in fire, like I was just beyond out of my comfort zone. He was like, I'm surprised because like you speak so well and you exude confidence. I just want you to know that. And like those experiences, those people push me beyond my comfort zone, and that kind of advocacy that I wouldn't have had for myself. Like those are key moments of my career thus far.
Thanks, Yvette, for sharing. Barb, do you have any thoughts on some positive experiences you've had along the way?
Absolutely. First of all, I applaud all the diverse audience that's on this call right now. I think all of us probably share a common thread of wanting to do more and be stronger, faster, smarter, just because sometimes you walk into the room and you're the only one that looks like you. And you think, am I in the men's room when I'm supposed to be in the women's room? No, you're where you're supposed to be. And so just to be your authentic self and use your authentic voice, it matters, and it creates such an opportunity for those around you to be accepted and to see that it's not scary to work with someone different. And sometimes it's fun. A lot of times it's fun. So I think I challenge everyone here to really just be yourself, because you're worth it and you're worth sharing your experience with everyone that you're working with. I think that has really come back to me tenfold with the men that I work with and the women that I work with. Their acceptance has really been reinforcement that being yourself makes the difference.
Thanks, Barb. Juan, do you have any positive experiences you want to share along the way? It could be education or career.
I do. I have always had a good, positive group of people around me, and they have always been very encouraging. There are people that I have met a long time ago, and they have always been part of my positive encouragement, and some of them are actually here now in this call too. So that's awesome. I had many people that have advocated, and especially during my education, during this worst pandemic of generations, we carried each other through our hard times. And I guess I really don't have much words to describe that other than being thankful, because it puts that extra variable of a complexity when you want to achieve something and you have everything set up, but then this happens, right? But even now, in this position, the way I got it is because people advocated for me. One of my friends, she's here now, Jira. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't probably had the opportunity I had now. And of course, people that helped me along the way to make sure that I get here. So I think advocating for others makes a huge difference, of course. And even if it's little, even if it's a lot, of course, but advocating. But I think that's what I have. I mean, I guess I had the most unusual journey, but I have the typical results when someone helps you. So that's how it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. All right, Shadi, how about you?
I think if we look at the essence of being minority is having courage. It's you being, I don't know how many of the audience have felt that they are the only person who looks in a specific way, who speaks in a specific way, and comes from different world, family-wise or country-wise. What I see in that is courage. And the essence of inclusion is having these courageous people included and make them prove that they can actually achieve what they achieved in the other sides of their lives. Talking about an immigrant, it's tough to be an immigrant, but or it's tough to be from immigrant family. It's in different level. So I think one positive aspect of this in my professional life is I have always met the people who understood this. They understood and appreciated who I am. And they never judged me based on my background, my ethnic group, my accent, or they looked at what I have achieved. And I kind of feel like I owe it a lot to those dominant people. And I'm happy to say white men who included me in the conversation, who pushed me for the leadership anywhere I ever went. And I think all those people have always been part of my success. If that person at that specific time wasn't there to advocate for me and push me towards the leadership and success, I couldn't do it by myself because I was alone. So I would always encourage people who are part of the dominant population to look after the minorities in your work environment. They're usually quiet. They might not make noises. They might not talk about the stuff that hurts them. But by including them, you give them the courage to be included and say what they need to say and be who they want to be. So that's basically what I wanted to say about it.
Thanks, Shadi. I think everybody on this call, like, just recognize your power to make someone's path different. Like, we all have a lot more, you think, what can I do? We all have a lot more power than we think we do to affect change. So the last kind of common question I have for everybody is, do you see us achieving our goal of having a field that reflects the diversity of our community? Like, do you see us getting there? Yvette, thoughts?
I don't want to say that I'm a pessimist. It's just that, I guess from my experience, it's been really, really tough to navigate. Just like engineering and like being a woman and person of color. Just throughout my like educational and like career experiences thus far, I feel like there are so many barriers and obstacles that people like me or people with other like diverse backgrounds have to face. And I think it's up to corporations and companies to put forth so much more energy into creating opportunities or advocating for diverse employees. I just want to say, like, from my experience, you know, I've put forth a lot of my energy outside of, you know, just like being an engineer into various like affinity groups within engineering. And I've put in a lot of work through volunteering, you know, to uplift those with similar backgrounds as mine, or, you know, just other diverse backgrounds. And, you know, I do this out of, you know, because I want to pay it forward, but I think it takes more than that pay it forward mentality. I think it does take like the leadership at companies to realize that this is important. It's important for, you know, again, diversity within the company and like the happiness overall of your employees, but also it affects your bottom line at the end of the day. Like, diversity is imperative for your company culture and for your company vision. And it will make an impact financially too. Like, just overall, it's like statistically proven that like diversity at the C-suite level improves like profits in the bottom line. So I think there's a lot of barriers, I think thus far, that companies are facing, obviously, in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion. But once, you know, they get over that and like put forth more resources to it, I do think, just because in general, also the population of like millennials and general Gen Z are more diverse, it will eventually come through into the workforce.
Well, thank you, Yvette. Let's see, Barb, thoughts on that? Are we going to get there?
What's that?
Are we going to get there?
Heck yeah. I mean, we're troubleshooters. That's our job, right? That's what brings us here, to solve problems. And so, but it's not a one and done solution. This is a walk the talk, everyday siege. Let's get after it. I think that there's no reason for us to, I haven't seen a reason to get complacent. That's what I can say for sure. And I think that everyone on this call and beyond should have a vested interest. And it's our job to show them the data. And I think that we have a really great opportunity right now. And I think that every day is, you know, when Yvette's tired, I'm picking up the slack. We can do it together. And I think that I think it's going to take a lot of vigilance, and we have to keep pushing it forward, and we have to keep the messaging strong and demonstrate the data. Sorry, but the proof is in and pudding, right? We can change things, but we have to be vigilant. We have to keep up the messaging, and we have to prove our worth. So we can do it. That's what I think. Thanks.
Thanks, Barb. Juan, what do you think?
I guess I will probably give my point of view mostly as a recent grad than someone being in the field as much. But I took classes around maybe, I don't know, like 2012 or something like that. My mathematics and physics courses were mostly guys. I'm gonna say about 10% of those were mixed. It was 90% guys mostly, most of the time. When I got accepted at UIC back in 2018, I went into my engineering courses that I'm gonna say they were equally represented, 45% to 55, sometimes even more women in the courses. And we're talking about courses, higher level courses. So it's not like even prerequisites anymore. So core classes for engineering courses. I think this is changing little by little. Like I said, I can't really say much of the industry because I haven't been here that long. But just my experience as a recent grad, as a student, it seems to be equally represented. But I mean, I guess the opportunities are still necessary for those who graduate. So those are my 2 cents.
Well, that's good to hear. That's optimistic, Juan, to see that there's change happening. Shadi, what do you think? Are we going to get there where we want to be?
Yeah, first I should say, hearing Barb, like, and MLK Day was recently, I felt really empowered by what she said. It was very strong, like, comment. Thanks, Barb. You've always been such a good advocate. But I also want to say, I see the change because I work with a lot of young men, and I see how they see me, I see how they respect me, and I see how they don't see me as different. I'm sure this wasn't the same for the past generation. So as all these co-workers, young men that I work with, like grow in their career and become leaders, I'm sure there are less biases in their mind towards other ethnic groups or other genders. So it will be more neutral environment in the leadership in the near future, as we can see it even right now within our own team. So I'm positive that there is going to be a change.
Great. I know personally, I definitely see a difference in attitudes generationally that makes me very optimistic. So now we're going to kind of switch to a little bit more curated questions for each of the panelists. We'll have one, and we are going to try to shoot for maybe a 2-minute response each to keep our time frame. So probably a little bit more concise than maybe our original plan. So the first question I have is for Juan. Tell us about, you may have done this a little bit, but tell us a little more about your experience as a first-generation high school and college grad in engineering. What were some of your struggles, and how can we as a community best support those in a similar position?
As a first generation university grad, it's actually a big honor to represent my family and a lot of the people that go through this struggle. that you really have to struggle to get to what you want. My parents used to tell me that it's always difficult to finish your education when you're a little older because you're older, but in reality, it's just because you have a lot of things in your head already. And it's always difficult to focus on some other of the things that when you're younger, you really don't care to even think about. I guess that's one thing. As I was growing up, I wanted to do something big with my life. I didn't really have any role models in my family to look forward to be like in the future. But I don't know. I guess it just comes with the environment you were raised and the people you meet. And also, I'm the oldest of 6 in my family, so I always thought that I had the responsibility to make sure that everyone else had an example to follow. And not only that, because I have seen that most of the time when I needed some help, it didn't come from my family because it wasn't, they didn't have the experience or anything like that. So most of the time, anyone that helped me was outside my family. And it was amazing because it teaches you to do the same. Because not only you look out for your family, but you look out for everyone else as well. And it's an impressive feeling. When I was a manager, I managed different personalities and different backgrounds of people, and you learn to deal with different personalities, really. But you also see that they have huge potential that no one really sees, because statistically speaking, most of the people that are going to work in retail are going to work in retail the rest of their life, or like they think that they need to be working. They think that they can only work in retail the rest of their life, but there is so much more to it. I wanted to tell people that they can do a lot more than what they were statistically destined to do. But it's a little difficult to make them follow you when you're not teaching by example. So that's when I decided to go back to school and make sure that whatever I say is actually backed up by my actions. That anything that I can preach to anyone is actually proven by my own self. That I'm not just saying it because it's possible. I'm saying it because I made it possible. And I think that's what made me, that was my catalyst to make sure that I finished my education. I guess I couldn't be more grateful for the people that I met along the way. But it has, and like I said before, I think he has to start from when you're younger. When I was in high school, there was a counselor that went to my class, and I didn't even know what I wanted to do after high school. Most of my family worked in construction, and I said, well, I guess that's my future. She said, if you want to be part of your future and change your future, because you're statistically will be destined to fail, change it. You haven't failed, and you will be the one to change your future and your family's future as well. And since then, for one reason or another, I wasn't able to finish my education when I aimed for it, but there's no wrong time to finish it. And even if you struggle, even if you fall, even if you cry, even if you fall again, you get up and keep going, because I mean, it's not going to get any easier if you complain. It's just going to get just as difficult. Someone else did it, why not you? Right? And I think that's that has been one of the things that has taught me along the way, also, to make sure that not only do I tell people that it's possible, show them that it's possible, but also make sure that they also understand that there are possibilities that you might fall, but you have to get up and keep going. And I think that's that's I guess that's one way to see my struggles, I guess. So
well, that's some good advice, Juan. Thank you so much. Some good lived advice. Thank you for sharing. So for Yvette, you have experienced many instances where you were the only woman, only Mexican American, only person of color, only person from a low income background in the room, as we've talked about. How did you advocate for yourself, and what could allies and mentors do to help lift others coming from similar backgrounds to feel included and empowered?
Yeah, so a lot of this conversation we've had has been around, kind of, advocacy along the way and like where it starts and how to continue it. And so I'm a huge advocate for one, like volunteering and like community service, but two, also like affinity groups. So one, in terms of the advocating and community service aspect, like I myself benefited from a nonprofit like with academic enrichment programming in Dallas when I was 10. And they gave me like access to like technology and like math enrichment and English and, just all these things that like weren't a focus at my school. When I was in public school, the focus was mainly, like do well in these standardized tests and then the school does great, I guess. And so just having that like from the start was like really, really great for like putting these ideas in my head of like, oh my gosh, I can pursue STEM, or I could pursue English, or I could pursue higher education, which were things I wasn't thinking about when I was a kid in my like also low income background, because again, I didn't have those mentors. I didn't have those like professionals to look up to. And then I'll say in college, it was pretty important for me because again, I was experiencing these like barriers to succeeding. Like it's already really hard just, being a college student, taking an engineering course load on top of like other activities you're involved in, but add in the like stress of being a first generation college student and really having to navigate this and be away from home and like not have people to talk to you about this, like not knowing really how to adapt. There was a lot that I feel like I was struggling with, and was great as I joined like Women in Engineering, and I joined like National Society for Black Engineers, and I joined Engineering Student Council. And all of these were really good resources for one, finding other students with like a different identity that I like identified as, having those similar experiences of like struggling academically or just finding resources academically. And then again, also finding professional development resources, which again, when you're a first generation student or first generation professional, like you're having to navigate being a student and like networking and resume prep and like finding all these companies and like just like professional development that you've never experienced before. So all those groups were really, really helpful. And again, opening my eyes to just like the path forward and how to succeed. And just like having people to support me along the way. And that was one way that I found a community. And then again, I'd say just like at work, I have ASHRAE, I have Women in ASHRAE, I have like Network Empowering Women, specifically at ESD. We recently started a D&I committee as well. These are all like affinity groups and employee resource groups are so important for other diverse employees to find community, to address barriers specific to those like communities. Like I would like as a woman, I'm addressing like what kind of obstacles am I facing within the construction industry, but also as a person of color, as a Latina, I want to again address those specific obstacles as a queer person as well. Like again, there's very specific and distinct obstacles that different diverse people are having to navigate. And one, it's good to find those communities and to find those other like people who would advocate for you and advocate for themselves. But then I just also, the last piece I want to emphasize is allyship. allyship is so important. Just because you don't identify like as a woman or a person of color, it doesn't mean that you cannot advocate for underrepresented groups. And so that's what it means to be an ally. It means like if someone's like, let's say you're in a meeting with another woman and like it's mostly a room full of men and she keeps getting interrupted, to be an ally would be like, hey, she's saying something, like let's like bring the attention back to her so that you know, she's feeling heard and feeling included. And that can go into any other underrepresented groups within the room that you're in, but that's what it means to be a good ally for sure. So those are ways that I would like to address that, but also, yeah, just go allies and go employee resource groups.
Thanks, Yvette. Those are some great thoughts and ideas that I think we should all consider. So Barb, over the course of your career, starting out as a building engineer and landing in your current position as Director of Operations and Construction at the Willis Tower, just a little building over there in the Loop, what leadership philosophies have you developed that have helped create an inclusive environment?
So very many. I do like to lead with a very important design that I think we're all privy to, and that's that 2 ears, 1 mouth. That ratio is really important. I think that so many of us, especially when we're in passionate conversations with coworkers or contractors, sometimes it's hard to stop waiting to talk and just listen, right? We really need to stop and listen. And so for me, it's really important that there's room for everybody's voice at the table. And sometimes, you know, and to Yvette's point, you know what? If we run out of chairs, I'll be the one to stand up and say, hey, can you get another chair, please? And make sure that we make room for everyone. So as a leader, I think that making sure everyone's invested, part of that buy-in is really getting their input. What makes this project important to you? And what does success look like to your team? And find out what do they need to help them be successful. I define success this way. What do you need to be successful? Because as a leader, you're not a leader if you've got no one to lead, right? So really listening and be invested in the success of your team. And, you know, humor's a healer. It just is. Everybody makes mistakes. And I think that one thing that I've really learned and has been very disarming to a lot of my peers or even my bosses, actually, that it's not a big deal for me to come up and say, that was me. I totally screwed that up. Hey, everybody, spotlight. Because I can't do better if I don't clean the wound, right? So it's not a big deal to be wrong, but I do commit to doing better next time, every time. And I think that when you lead with that vulnerability and with that availability to be wrong and to be heard and to listen, it just makes it that much more comfortable for your team to be successful and fail up in ways that they didn't know that they could, right? Yeah, we made a mistake here, but look at the 4 things we learned. And making sure that you move forward together, not just one person is a leader, really bringing the whole team. So I'd say those are my big takeaways.
I love it, Barb. You sound like a great leader. I love all those ideas, and I definitely think like leading by example is key. Okay, so Shadi, you have such an interesting background, growing up in Iran, living in Australia, and now working in the field of commissioning here in the States. Tell us how your background influences you and impacts how you lead your team. Kind of similar question like you know, how did that all shape you, and what are your philosophies now?
So working and living in different environments and countries and cultures help you figure things that are good in each culture and use it for your own good. I think that's how I learned how to survive mentally and professionally. And that helped me, like how I was able to have this balance between different positive sides of each culture and use them. So I'm Iranian. I come from a very collective culture, and you care about your community. You take care of your community. It's not you are not the core of everything in the universe. Like I'm talking about the extreme individualist mindset. So I always applied that with my relationship with my team as well. What I always care about is that my team is in a healthy state of mind, and that's when we can achieve. I like to be honest with them, and I like us to help each other grow personally and not professionally only. So what has helped me is I'm not personally that much a status or resume focus for myself. What I care about is my own team, because we are spending majority of our times with our coworkers. It's important to know what it makes them feel better about what they do. Is this something they're comfortable to do, or they need support? When you need to push and pull, and just make sure that their health and what they need is one of the main priorities as well, because we cannot do anything if we don't care about each other in a team, and we just work like a machine to help our own agenda or our own status and all that. So for me, it mattered in a way that I asked how my coworkers felt in a special situation, just having this connection in a healthy way and in an honest way. And a lot of what Barb said, showing my vulnerabilities as a team leader, that I understand you, that's a very, very strong ability to be able to show that and make them not be afraid of showing what they need. So I think that's partly where it comes from my background, and learning how to adopt and how to grow and how to be a better person. And I got that feedback, to be honest. The positive thing was I got good feedbacks with this attitude, like with this behavior that I have, that people always had a good feeling about me after I left. Like they told me that you did this and this and this, things that you might not hear in day-to-day basis. And that's important to me. And at the end of the day, that's how it's good for our work as well. That's how it's good for our company as well. If we are all healthy employees who work together as a team and care about each other, I'm sure we bring a lot of success to the company that we work for.
Thanks, Shadi. It sounds like you lead a very inclusive team. So I just want to thank all the panelists today. I really appreciate, like, we went a little bit longer than I was planning, but I feel like everything that everyone had to say was just so valuable. I didn't want to cut anything off. So after hearing our panelists talk, I know that this really probably sparks a little bit of discussion in all of us. So now we're going to split into breakout rooms, and you'll be with a smaller group. And if you have something that you just really want to share based on what the panelists were sharing today, you know, maybe the first 5 minutes people could share if there's something they want to share of their own experience. But maybe the last 10 minutes, I want each group to brainstorm and think about specific things that they can do in their own role, in their own job, to encourage diversity in our field, in our workplace, and in ASHRAE as a whole. You know, an example is like just invite somebody that you think would enjoy ASHRAE to be a part of it, that maybe would add a little diversity to ASHRAE. Like we want to reflect our community, and sometimes it takes more than just like talking about it as a goal, and maybe there's specific things that we can do. So each breakout group will, like, someone should not, you know, you'll have one leader that's going to report out to the larger group. So we'll break out for like, maybe it's going to be 15 minutes now, I'm thinking, Kevin. And then we'll have a report out. Maybe one leader from each group can share for like 2 minutes the high level takeaways that your group came up with. Anything else we want to tell them before we throw them in there? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I'll send out a broadcast to all the different rooms after that first 5 minutes is up, just to let everyone know to kind of change gears and start brainstorming for future actions. That message will show up kind of in the center of your screen towards the top. It's not super visible, so just keep an eye out for it. I might send the same thing 2 or 3 times just so that everybody sees it. But I'll give that kind of 10-minute warning so everybody knows to switch topics slightly. And I will send everyone to their rooms right now. See you in a little bit. To those still here, is anyone still trying to get into their room? Just ask one more time. Is anyone still in the lobby right now trying to get into their room?
I cannot join. I have to leave.
Okay, no problem. Let me see if there's anything I can do. Do you see an option anywhere on your screen to join the room?
What kind of option?
I don't know what it would look like on your end. I'm going to try to move you to another room and maybe you'll get a prompt. Just move you now. Did anything pop up?
Yeah, it says join and not now.
All right, go ahead and join it.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
Hey.
I think some people were feeling a little shy with breakout rooms. Some people jumped and headed for the hills when we went to breakout rooms. So
Yeah, sorry about that. We had a minimum of 6 folks in every breakout room right before I hit go, but then a few people logged off right before, so there are a few small rooms, but hopefully everybody still had a good conversation. Hoping we can have one person from each breakout room just share, maybe one of the experiences, one of the thoughts that you came up with. So
yeah, Kevin, I was in room number 1, so maybe we'll just go by the
perfect
room order. Hopefully you remember what room you're in. And Aaron is going to speak for our group. So Aaron, jump in, tell us.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I was in the group with Nancy and Julia. So a few things that we talked about was first, there's been a recent big change in the engineering field where women have, been getting more into the field, and if there's a way we can, help increase that, that would be great. Such as like in IIT, we have, I would say, as a few people have mentioned in the call, that there's still like a small percentage of women in the engineering classes, and mostly it's dominated by men. So hopefully, very soon we're able to see a bigger change in that. Next, we're thinking about how can we get more early exposure to careers related to ASHRAE. So such as, going to local colleges and universities and speaking to students about, those careers that are out there for them that could really help inspire them and, pursue a career like some of us have. Next, scholarships, of course, help in diversity. I think Nancy mentioned that her company offers a scholarship and an opportunity to intern for them as well. And I think that's amazing, 2 birds in 1 stone. So that's definitely a good idea. And next is that, as we mentioned, early exposure. So internships can be open more to, younger classmates like freshmen and sophomore, instead of waiting till, they're more juniors and seniors. I think that would really help open up their exposure to the careers. And that way, getting whatever they learn in their summer internship and they're a freshman, once they get into their junior level classes, they can be like, oh, I learned this in my internship and it makes much more sense because I had that hands-on, experience working with that. So that's a summary of what we talked about.
Thanks, Aaron. I don't know who was in breakout room 2.
So I'm going to speak for room 2.
Okay.
We sort of had 2 points of discussion. The first was just that what kind of one concerning problem in the industry right now is if you look at polling, a lot of white men are actually afraid to be mentors for diverse individuals or women, and most of those polls were taken in response to the Me Too movement. And it just seems that there are some men in positions of power that are maybe a little bit afraid. The world's changed a lot. Don't necessarily, just fear some fear of being canceled, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of offending individuals, and thought just it's so important just to get over that and get over that fear and just understand that no one's out to get you. And, it's just so important that those individuals in those positions help bring others up. And, as long as you have good intentions, no one's really out to get you. It's not, cancel culture isn't as bad in real world as it seems in the media, on the news and social media. So it's just so important for those in positions of power and positions to raise people up to be brave and do that. And then the other was just the cost of education as a barrier and trying to do something about that. I mean, obviously scholarships for first generation college students or diverse groups can be helpful, but it can often be difficult just to find those opportunities. Just the fact that education is such a barrier and likely will continue to be one for diverse groups. So obviously there's no great or easy solution to that, but just keeping that in mind is one of the biggest barriers. It's something we talked about. And that was it for group 2.
Okay, group 3.
Okay, I'm the spokesman for group 3. My name is Virginia Wilson. I'm with Hatchell. We're a rep firm. And we talked really about kind of day-to-day activities in our organizations. The first one being support. And we kind of all talked about how there have been times in our careers where we have been that voice at the table that was ignored or talked over. And, 20 years ago, that was just a thing, especially if you were a young woman in the industry. And I think things have improved immensely, and that isn't as much of a thing anymore, but I personally experienced it. And I think we should all take responsibility, and we all kind of agree that you have to be the one in the room that notices those things and support those voices and make sure everyone's heard. And then we just also discussed that, we all have everyday meetings with our teams, with our management groups, whatever. And there's times in those meetings where you can bring up diversity and inclusion, and we should take responsibility to do that, because those of us in this meeting kind of know it's an issue, and other people do too. But, if we all want to know what we can do, and that's something that we can do, and it's not difficult. Just have to remember and tell yourself to do it. And then we talked about some other things. Again, be the person in your organization to suggest the mentorship program or the teamwork that is more inclusive of everyone involved. And, just kind of take responsibility in your organization to do what you can to change things and make them better. And I guess the last thing we talked about was that we sort of looked back on our education, and we realized that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was in engineering school, it was not common for a lot of women to be in engineering classes. And some of the more recent graduates agreed that has changed, and that's a good thing. There's a lot more women in engineering, a lot more diverse people in engineering in all sorts of areas. And we just reflected that that's a good thing. But now that these people are in the workforce, we need to support them. That's it.
Great, thanks, Virginia. And some good stuff going on in the chat too, so be sure to look at that. How about group number 4?
Sure who group number 4 was. Maybe it was ours, but I can very, very quickly mention one of the items that we talked about, and we had a positive feedback for it. Is at DLR group, we have something called First Friday. When we, at First Friday of each month, one of the employees talks about their life experience, who they are, where they come from. That helps people vent about all the things that they have gone through and introduce themselves in a very open environment, and gives a lot of people some background on people, who these people are and what they have been through. And it has been very, very educational, especially for people who are from the minority groups, like first generation Americans who came from different backgrounds. For me, it has been very, very informational. So this is a great idea that came up in our group that I thought it's worth sharing before the session finishes.
Okay, great. I think we had 8 groups. So does anybody know if they were breakout group number 5?
Liz, we were 8.
I wrote that one down.
Breakout down at the bottom, and it tells you what group you're on. If you look at the breakout at the bottom menu.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so that was room. Actually, that wasn't room number 4, Shadi. So room number 4 was Jorge, Kate, Katie, and Tiffany. Did you guys nominate a report out person? If nobody says anything, I'll just keep going.
So we got cut off before we can nominate someone, but what I will say is that we discussed holding inclusive events and making sure that even our conversations aren't exclusive. So notice if someone isn't participating and try to include them, or take a second look at what the topic is and make sure that maybe the topic shifts to something where they could participate. We specifically discussed golf events. Not everyone plays golf. So trying to find creative ways to still engage with the event if you don't play. And Tiffany and everyone else, please feel free to chime in.
Oh. Kate, I like it. I'm not a golfer myself, so I'm all for it.
I would just add to that that we also talked a lot about asking questions. So especially like, what do you mean by that? When maybe somebody said something and you might feel offended, or conversely, if somebody is saying something and you might catch yourself making assumptions about that person, just to get curious instead of letting your mind go with your assumptions, or whether that is assumptions about somebody else's experience or what they might be trying to say.
That's a good point.
Just to piggyback, so everybody in our group gets to talk since we didn't pick a leader. Another thing we said, I was piggybacking off of what I think Barb said, and we have 2 years, and so we should listen first. But I think the conversation also needs to be noticing who's not speaking as well, and if that conversation you're having is exclusive and not inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think that's a good point, Katie. All right, what about room 5? I have Elise, Hanadi, and Yvette.
Yeah, I've got some notes from our room. I just want to echo what Virginia said about, being like a woman in the room and not being included in the conversation. We talked about like kind of it's like a two-way street in terms of like how you are the keeper of your own value and no one else will like be the keeper of that. So it kind of can be up to you again to make that introduction for yourself, but two, in terms of the two-way street, like again, up to our allies and like maybe the men in the room to include us in the conversation. Additionally, I wanted to echo what Kate said about the like inclusive events aspect. Shadi mentioned this last week during our training conversation about like how there's still this like boys culture within engineering sometimes, especially like her experience in Australia, when she had to like learn about sports to be able to keep up with the conversations. And I kind of just want to say, like, I realized this like after she mentioned it last week, that as like YEA co-chair, I've been organizing like, a lot of like sports events and a lot of happy hours, like catering to this culture that I've been ingrained in. And then it made me think like, what other things has my group done at work that have made me feel included, which have been like painting and wine nights and like cooking nights and like game nights. So just like finding new ways to like create those inclusive events, so that not everything is like sports and like heavy drinking culture, like something else that makes people feel included. And the last thing I wanted to mention was, Elise is director of ESG at EQ office, which, that's like really up and coming in terms of how stakeholders are holding other companies accountable to, like energy, sustainability, and governance. And she talked about like the energy aspect, but she also talked about the social impact aspect and like how EQ is like creating like mentoring program opportunities to, provide like apprenticeships and all those opportunities to underrepresented groups. I think that's really important for companies to do. Again, creating that pipeline for the like underrepresented people who don't have access to education or access to internships as easily as others may have. Like that's a really good way to making sure that we're creating this like pipeline for their employees or for like future diverse candidate employees.
Thanks, Yvette. What about, who is the reporter for room 6? Oh, Shadi, that might have been your room. You already spoke. So we can skip to room 7. Cindy, I hope you're the reporter for room 7 since you're the only one left.
Okay, well, I can be, yes. We didn't select one, but I
we must be to the speed round now.
Okay. So we actually talked a little bit about how to improve diversity within the workplace. And we talked a little bit about recruiting and looked at it kind of on two facets. One is, you know, if we really are committed to improving diversity, we have to think about who we're sending out to recruit on our behalf. You know, are we believe that there's probably more successful diverse recruiting when you're sending out, when the people who are doing the recruiting represent the diverse groups that you want to hire. On the other hand, one thing we talked about is that we, you know, our firms, we get comfortable recruiting from our alma mater, recruiting from the schools that are closest to us. And sometimes these schools don't necessarily represent the types of diverse candidates that we want to have. And we have to be a little bit more strategic in terms of where we choose to recruit. And it could be something that happens on a yearly basis or over a course of multiple years, that we ensure that we're recruiting from colleges and universities that represent the diversity, the diverse pool of engineering candidates that we want to have reflected in our company. One other thing I would say was something that Amy mentioned, was that she is on a committee that was evaluating how they scored SWE scholarships. And they really kind of brought an EDI lens to that, and began to give credit for other attributes that don't necessarily get attributed to who gets a scholarship. Like, was this person working and to put themselves through college? You know, were they working and studying at the same time? And did they, you know, and what did they achieve? Because that, a lot of first generation college students are working and putting themselves through school, and it does, sometimes it can impact your performance, but that should be acknowledged as part of the scholarship process. So I thought that was really telling about really rethinking the different attributes and characteristics of who is deserving of a scholarship.
Great, thanks, Cindy. All right, and last but not least, room 8.
All right, I'll keep this one quick since I think we talked a lot about what a lot of the other groups have said. But one of the things that John in our group said towards the very beginning of our discussion was like some of the projects that he's worked on, particularly I think he said it was in a school district, is seeing how individual efforts can add up. So just that being the reminder that it is super important for us to be the ally, the advocate, the sponsor, the mentor for people, because even if we're not making sweeping decisions for our company, we're impacting one person, and that one person can also impact more people than just us. And that's how, you know, we have to find those people that keep them coming into our field. We want more people, and we want to get those to hear everyone as well, those diverse voices.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. I think too, we all should just like kind of examine who you know and figure out who can you invite and include to come with you to something in ASHRAE. I mean, this is, you know, more ASHRAE focused, right? But like, let's be specific, you know, I mean, it's not going to change until we start like personally inviting and making people feel welcome and included. So I love all the dialogue that happened today. I appreciate everybody who hung around for the end of this and the breakout rooms. I really feel so excited by the amount of people attending, and I hope we can do this again. But in the meantime, reach out if you have any ideas, LinkedIn, email, whatever. We're really open to anything anyone can recommend.
Thanks, Nancy, for putting this on. I think it's been good.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to all the panelists too.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
And thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Great
night.
job, Nancy. Great job,
Bye.
panelists. Thank you so much for the contributions.
Bye-bye.